The forge sat at the edge of the forest, silent under the dim light of dawn. Bill wiped the sweat from his brow, the heat from the previous night's work still lingering in his muscles. His hammer rested beside the anvil, gleaming faintly as though it remembered the blows it had struck. He had crafted weapons for nobles, for heroes, for kings, but nothing ever weighed as heavily on him as the sword he had forged for the man who claimed to save the world. He remembered the moment clearly. The hero had accepted the blade with admiration, calling him the greatest blacksmith alive. And yet, admiration brought no comfort. Every strike of the hammer had carried the echoes of lives he couldn't save, of promises he had failed to keep. The memory of Sepia's smile haunted him more than any battle ever could. The village was quiet, but Bill sensed the tension in the air. Soldiers patrolled streets that should have been empty, their armor clinking with practiced precision. News had spread quickly. Those who opposed the Empire's decrees were being hunted, and the Empire's wrath spared no one. He gritted his teeth and picked up the small case he always carried. Tools, materials, secrets. Everything a blacksmith could need, and perhaps the means to survive. As he stepped into the cobblestone streets, shouting erupted nearby. Merchants and commoners protested the Empire's latest edict, their voices trembling but defiant. Soldiers formed ranks, spears raised, and for a moment the world seemed ready to ignite. Bill froze, recognizing the figure among the crowd, his uncle, Phil. Rage and fear twisted inside him. Why would his uncle risk everything? He had always warned Bill to avoid these confrontations. Before he could call out, chaos erupted. Soldiers charged and screams pierced the morning air. Civilians scattered, stumbling over debris, desperate to escape. Bill didn't hesitate. He grabbed his uncle's arm, dragging him toward a narrow alley that only someone familiar with the town could navigate. Behind them, the sounds of pursuit grew louder, relentless, unforgiving. In that alley, something shifted. The walls, the cobblestones, even the air seemed to hum with a strange energy. Blue lines glowed across every surface, revealing hidden weaknesses, hidden paths. Bill's eyes widened. He could see the world as no one else could. This power, unexpected, unnatural, might be the only thing keeping them alive. With precise strikes, he opened a passage through the crumbling wall, and they slipped through just as the soldiers thundered past. The hidden forge awaited, a sanctuary within the dense forest. But even there, peace was temporary. The Empire's reach was long, its vengeance meticulous, and Bill knew, deep down, that survival was just the beginning. What came next would require more than skill. It would demand strategy, patience, and a willingness to confront the man who had once seemed untouchable, the hero himself. The forest was alive with whispers, not of birds or wind, but something older, something aware. Every tree seemed to lean closer, listening, judging. Bill's uncle clutched his side, blood staining his tunic, but he refused to slow down. Bill's mind raced, not just with strategy, but with calculations, like a blacksmith measuring the strength of metal. Every step, every turn mattered. They reached the edge of a clearing where remnants of old ruins peeked through the overgrowth. Stones etched with symbols long forgotten, arcs of broken columns and the faint glimmer of hidden pathways. Bill knelt, brushing away moss, revealing an inscription. Those who wield the fire of creation must pay the price of destruction. His stomach twisted. It was a warning, or perhaps a prophecy. Either way, it felt personal.
"Bill, I don't think they'll stop," Phil whispered, his voice ragged. "The hero, he won't forgive."
Bill's jaw tightened. Forgive? Forgive what?
That thought had haunted him since the day the sword left his forge. The blade had been perfect, beautiful, lethal, and yet it had carried with it despair, betrayal, a chain reaction of death that Bill could neither control nor reverse. And now, he realized, the hero had become more than just a figure of admiration. He was a force, unstoppable, and entirely human in his capacity for cruelty. The ground trembled beneath their feet. Bill's heart jumped, not in fear, but in recognition. The power he had glimpsed in the alley, the lines of glowing blue, it wasn't random. It was drawing him forward, guiding him. He followed, dragging Phil along, deeper into the ruins. Every step seemed to pulse with energy, and the whispers grew louder, forming words he could almost understand. Forge, fight, remember. At the center of the ruins lay an altar, cracked and worn, but still radiating heat. A single ember hovered above it, suspended as if by will alone. Bill approached cautiously. He could feel it, an energy similar to what had saved them, but older, stronger. It was raw creation, like the forge itself, waiting to be commanded. His fingers hovered over the ember, and in that instant memories flooded him. The faces of those he had failed, the screams of villages burned, the smiles of children lost, each memory a hammer strike against his soul. But beneath the pain, a resolve formed. He had made the hero's weapon, yes, but that had been the past. This was the present. And if survival demanded mastery over this ember, mastery over the energy that seemed to bind life and death, then he would bend it, not for glory, not for revenge, but for control over what came next. Phil gasped, breaking the moment. "Bill, the soldiers!" His eyes widened as a shadow fell over the clearing. The hero himself, clad in armor that glinted like polished steel, stood at the edge, his gaze piercing. In his hand, the sword Bill had forged, now worn with battle, blood, and history. The hero smiled, an expression devoid of warmth, full of calculation. "You've grown stronger," the hero said, voice calm but heavy. "But strength alone won't save you." Bill straightened, hand still hovering above the ember. "I don't intend to be saved," he replied. "I intend to choose. For once, I decide who lives and who dies." The hero's smile faltered. Perhaps he had not expected defiance. Perhaps he had never seen the blacksmith as more than a craftsman. But in the ruins, among whispers older than kingdoms, the ember pulsed, resonating with Bill's determination. And in that resonance, he understood something crucial. The blade he had forged was only part of the story. The forge itself, the energy that created it, could be wielded differently. The first clash of metal rang out as the hero advanced, sword raised. The forest trembled with the force of their collision. Sparks flew, illuminating the ruins with a harsh white light. Bill dodged, countered, his mind a whirlwind of strategy, every strike calculated, every movement precise. Phil watched, helpless but awed, as the blacksmith fought not just to survive, but to rewrite the rules of the game he had unwillingly entered. The battle was more than physical, it was a test of wills. Every blow carried history, regret, and the weight of choices made long before this moment. The ember above the altar pulsed faster, feeding Bill's strength, guiding him. And as sweat dripped and muscles screamed, he realized something terrifyingly exhilarating. He could win. Not because he was the stronger, faster, or more skilled, but because he understood the forge in a way the hero never could. Creation and destruction were two sides of the same hammer. And when the final strike came, the ruins echoed with a sound that was neither victory nor defeat, but something in between, a promise, a reckoning, a future forged in fire and shadow. The hero staggered back one step, surprise flashing across his face before discipline smothered it. Blood trickled from a shallow cut along his arm, seeping into the grooves of the sword's hilt. Bill noticed it immediately. The blade was reacting differently now, its glow uneven, unstable, as if confused by the hand that wielded it. "You feel it, don't you?" Bill said, breathing hard. "It doesn't answer you the way it used to." The hero tightened his grip. "A weapon obeys its master." "No," Bill replied quietly. "A weapon reflects its maker." The ember flared. Heat rushed through Bill's veins, not burning but sharpening him, stripping away hesitation. The glowing lines returned, stronger now, spreading across the ground, the hero's armor, even the sword itself. Bill could see the flaws, tiny stress fractures in the metal, micro-delays in the hero's movements, weaknesses no one else could perceive. The hero attacked again, faster this time, forcing Bill back toward the altar. Steel rang against steel, sparks spraying into the ruins. Each clash sent pain up Bill's arms, but he welcomed it. Pain meant he was still alive. Pain meant he was still choosing. Phil shouted from behind the fallen columns, but his voice faded beneath the roar of blood in Bill's ears. Then the hero made a mistake. A fraction of a second too much weight on his front foot, a habit formed after years of winning easily. Bill stepped inside the swing and struck, not at the hero, but at the sword. Never could. Creation and destruction were two sides of the same hammer, and when the final strike came, the ruins echoed with a sound that was neither victory nor defeat, but something in between. A promise, a reckoning, a future forged in fire and shadow. The hero staggered back one step, surprise flashing across his face before discipline smothered it. Blood trickled from a shallow cut along his arm, seeping into the grooves of the sword's hilt. Bill noticed it immediately. The blade was reacting differently now, its glow uneven, unstable, as if confused by the hand that wielded it. "You feel it, don't you?" Bill said, breathing hard. "It doesn't answer you the way it used to." The hero tightened his grip. "A weapon obeys its master." "No," Bill replied quietly. "A weapon reflects its maker." The ember flared. Heat rushed through Bill's veins, not burning, but sharpening him, stripping away hesitation. The glowing lines returned, stronger now, spreading across the ground, the hero's armor, even the sword itself. Bill could see the flaws, tiny stress fractures in the metal, micro-delays in the hero's movements, weaknesses no one else could perceive. The hero attacked again, faster this time, forcing Bill back toward the altar. Steel rang against steel, sparks spraying into the ruins. Each clash sent pain up Bill's arms, but he welcomed it. Pain meant he was still alive. Pain meant he was still choosing. Phil shouted from behind the fallen columns, but his voice faded beneath the roar of blood in Bill's ears. Then the hero made a mistake. A fraction of a second too much weight on his front foot, a habit formed after years of winning easily. Bill stepped inside the swing and struck, not at the hero, but at the sword. The impact screamed. The blade didn't shatter, but it cracked, a thin fracture racing along its edge like lightning through glass. The hero froze, horror flashing across his face as he felt it. "What did you do?" he demanded. Bill stepped back, lowering his weapon. "I reminded it who it belongs to." The ember dimmed suddenly, collapsing inward. The ruins groaned as if exhaling. The glowing lines vanished. The power receded, leaving Bill trembling, drained. He dropped to one knee, gasping. The hero could have finished him then. He didn't. Instead, he stared at the sword in his hand, turning it slightly, as if seeing it for the first time. For the first time, doubt crept into his expression. "You knew," the hero said slowly. "From the beginning,
You knew this could happen." "I knew what might happen," Bill replied. "I didn't know who you'd become." Silence stretched between them, thick and dangerous. At last the hero sheathed the cracked blade. "This isn't over," he said. "You've crossed a line you don't understand." Bill looked up at him, eyes steady despite the exhaustion. "No, I finally stepped onto it." The hero turned and disappeared into the trees, his soldiers retreating with him, leaving the ruins eerily still. Phil rushed to Bill's side, helping him stand. "You should have killed him." Bill shook his head. "That would have been easy." They didn't stay long. The ruins had served their purpose, and Bill could feel the ember's presence fading, as if it had judged him worthy enough to survive, but not to stay. By dawn they were moving again, deeper into lands untouched by imperial banners. Word spread faster than Bill expected. A blacksmith who wounded the hero, a blade that rejected its wielder. Whispers turned into rumors, rumors into fear. Nobles began quietly reinforcing their keeps. Merchants changed routes. Priests rewrote sermons warning of hubris and false saviors. And in the capital, the emperor listened. The emperor had never trusted heroes. They burned too brightly, gathered loyalty too quickly. The crack in the sword was not just a flaw, it was an opportunity. Orders were given, not to kill Bill Arden, to find him, to understand him. Meanwhile, Bill learned the cost of what he had awakened. The glowing lines returned at inconvenient times, during sleep, during moments of anger, during grief. He began to see weaknesses everywhere, in bridges, in walls, in people. Lies left fractures, fear bent intentions, power always warped those who held it too long. It became harder to look at the world without wanting to reshape it. Phil noticed the change first. "You're quieter," he said one night by the fire, "like you're listening to something I can't hear." Bill didn't answer right away. He watched the flames, seeing how heat flowed, how wood collapsed inward as it burned. "I'm trying to remember who I was before all this. I don't want to lose that." But the world didn't care what he wanted. They reached a border city days later, only to find it under siege, not by rebels, but by the empire itself. The city had refused a tax increase. The punishment was starvation. Bill stood on a hill overlooking the walls, watching smoke rise. He could see the weaknesses in the gates. He could bring them down in minutes. Phil followed his gaze and went pale. "Don't," he said. "This isn't our fight." Bill knew that was a lie, because the moment he turned away, the lines burned brighter than ever, and somewhere, far away, the cracked sword pulsed in answer. The city burned slowly, not in flames, but in silence. Bill watched carts leave through the eastern road at dawn, loaded with household goods, children wrapped in blankets, elders staring straight ahead with hollow eyes. No soldiers chased them. The empire didn't need to. Hunger was more effective than blades. By noon, the gates remained closed. By nightfall, screams carried over the walls. Phil couldn't take it anymore. "You see it, don't you?" he said, voice low. "You see how to end this." Bill nodded. The lines were everywhere now, veins of blue light running through the city's defenses, converging at a single pressure point beneath the western tower. One precise strike would collapse the gatehouse without killing anyone standing above it. He knew that. The ember hummed in agreement. "If you do this," Phil said carefully, "there's no going back. They won't call you a rumor anymore." Bill closed his eyes. He thought of Sepia's smile when the ring slipped onto her finger, of the way the hero had once looked at him, with awe, not fear, of the crack running through the sword. "I know," Bill said. He moved alone. The guards never saw him. They never heard the hammer strike. The sound was swallowed by the night itself, a dull thrum that passed through stone like a heartbeat. The gatehouse didn't explode. It folded. Stones slid inward, beams snapping in clean lines, dust billowing without fire or screams. The western gate sagged, then collapsed outward, leaving a wide, sloping breach. For 3 breaths, nothing happened. Then the city moved. People poured out, not charging, not rioting, but fleeing. Families ran, clutching what they could carry. The soldiers panicked, shouting conflicting orders, unsure whether to hold the walls or retreat. No one understood what had happened. Only Bill did. He stood in the shadows, watching the lines fade as the structure settled into its new shape. By morning, the city was empty. By afternoon, the Empire arrived. They found no enemy army, no banners, no bodies, only a broken gate and a rumor with a name. That night, the Emperor ordered the establishment of the Inquisition, and Bill Arden became their first priority. From that day forward, the world changed how it spoke. Blacksmiths were no longer just blacksmiths. Guilds were inspected. Independent forges were shut down for safety. Anyone working metal outside imperial sanction was questioned, sometimes disappearing entirely. Bill learned this when he reached the river city of Calmore. The forge there had been sealed, its owner hung in the square, a placard on his chest reading, "Unlicensed structural manipulation." Phil vomited. Bill didn't look away. He saw how the rope cut into the man's neck, how the gallows beam had been hastily reinforced after cracking under the weight, how fear had rushed the work. "This is my fault," Phil whispered. Bill shook his head. "No, this is what they always were." That night, Bill didn't sleep. The ember burned hot, restless, urging him to act. The lines showed him everything: how to bring down the gallows, how to collapse the magistrate's house, how to shut the river locks and starve the garrison. He did none of it. Instead, he wrote. Not plans, not threats, blueprints. He began leaving them behind. Anonymous, precise designs slipped under doors or carved into abandoned walls. Instructions on how to reinforce bridges cheaply, how to repair mills without imperial steel, how to build hidden forges that left no smoke. He didn't save cities. He taught them how to survive. The Empire noticed. So did the rebels. One night, a woman sat across from Bill at a tavern table without asking permission. Her hair was cut short, her eyes sharp, her hands scarred in ways no laborers ever were. "You're wasting time," she said. "You could tear the Empire in half." Bill sipped his drink. "And replace it with what?" She smiled thinly. "Us." Phil reached for his knife. Bill lifted a finger. "No." The woman leaned forward. "You think you're above sides. You're not. You broke a city gate without killing anyone and still changed the world. That makes you dangerous." "That makes me responsible," Bill corrected. She studied him for a long moment. "The hero won't let you keep doing this." Bill met her gaze. "Then he'll have to stop me." She laughed softly. "He's already trying." She stood, tossing a coin onto the table. "When you're done pretending this ends peacefully, find us." After she left, Phil exhaled shakily. "She's right, isn't she?" Bill stared at his hands. "I don't know," he said. "I just know that every time I strike, something else breaks." Weeks later, the hero finally moved, not with armies, with laws. A proclamation spread across the empire bearing the hero's seal. All structural failures caused by subversive interference shall be met with immediate and absolute response. Entire districts will be held accountable. Collective punishment. The next city Bill reached was already burning. This time, he didn't hesitate. The hammer fell again, and again, and again.
Walls collapsed inward, towers bent, roads split open like seams in cloth. The garrison scattered, some crushed, some fleeing, some surrendering in terror. Bill moved through it all like a force of nature, guided by glowing lines only he could see. When it was over, the city stood broken, but alive. Bill collapsed in the square, smoke rising around him, the ember roaring so loud it drowned out his thoughts. That's when he heard the applause. Slow, deliberate. He looked up. The hero stood at the edge of the destruction, cloak untouched, cracked sword at his side. Soldiers ringed the square, weapons raised, but hesitant. "Well done," the hero said. "You've proven my point." Bill dragged himself to his feet. "Your point?" "Your power needs control," the hero replied calmly. "Look at them. They already see you as a god or a monster. Either way, they'll beg someone to stop you." "You burned them first," Bill snarled. "Yes," the hero said, "so they'd accept what comes next." He spread his arms. "Join me." The square went silent. "I can end the suffering," the hero continued. "With you, with order. No more chaos, no more famine, no more guessing who deserves help." Bill laughed, a raw, broken sound. "You sound just like him." "Who?" "The man I used to believe in." The hero's smile faded. "Last chance," he said. Bill lifted his hammer. "No," he said, "this is yours." The ember flared brighter than ever, and for the first time the lines showed Bill something terrifying, not a weakness, a choice. The choice burned, not like fire, like weight. Bill saw it clearly now, two paths etched into the world's bones. One would shatter the square, kill the hero, and tear the empire apart in a single night. The other would spare him, and doom countless others more slowly. The lines did not guide him, they waited. The hero noticed the hesitation. "You see it now," he said softly. "You understand why I did what I did." Bill's hand trembled around the hammer. "I understand that you're afraid." A flicker crossed the hero's eyes, gone as quickly as it appeared. "I am practical," he replied calmly. "Fear is a luxury of those without responsibility." Bill took a step forward. The soldiers tensed. "You told me once that the sword's value depended on the wielder." "Yes, you were wrong." Bill raised the hammer. "Its value depended on its maker." The ground shifted, not violently, surgically. The hero reacted instantly, leaping back as the stone beneath his feet cracked along invisible seams. Soldiers fell as the square fractured into layered plates, sliding past one another like parts of a machine dismantling itself. The hero landed cleanly, blade drawn. "Enough," he commanded. "You don't want this." "I didn't want any of this," Bill replied. They moved at the same time. The hero struck first, his sword cutting the air with impossible speed. Bill barely raised his hammer in time. The impact sent a shockwave through the square, shattering windows blocks away. Bill skidded backward, boots carving trenches into stone. The sword screamed. Not metaphorically. The crack along its length glowed red, pulsing with strain. Bill's eyes widened. "It's failing." The hero's jaw tightened. "You don't understand what that blade carries." "I understand exactly," Bill said. "You never unlocked it. You forced it." He slammed the hammer into the ground. The square reassembled itself, walls rising, debris locking into place, streets folding inward to trap the soldiers in rigid corridors. The hero cut through the stone effortlessly, advancing step by step. "You could rebuild the world," the hero shouted over the chaos. "Instead, you're breaking it." Bill met his charge head-on, hammer against sword. This time, the crack widened. A sharp snap rang out as the blade buckled, its edge warping like overheated metal. The hero staggered back, staring in disbelief. "No," he whispered. Bill didn't press the attack. "You used it to dominate, not to protect. The sword knows the difference." For the first time, fear fully surfaced on the hero's face. Then the soldiers surged, magic flared, spears flew, arrows darkened the air. Phil screamed Bill's name. Bill spun, reacting on instinct, hammer sweeping in a wide arc. The air itself hardened, deflecting the barrage, but not all of it. A spear pierced Phil's side. Time slowed. Bill caught him as he fell, blood soaking into his tunic. "Phil, no, stay with me." Phil smiled weakly. You finally chose." Bill shook his head violently. "I chose wrong. I chose too late." Phil's hand tightened around Bill's wrist. "Listen to me. You can't fix everything. That's not your curse." His grip loosened. Bill screamed. The ember roared. The lines exploded into clarity. The city, the soldiers, the hero, the empire. Every structure revealed its truth at once. Bill stood. The ground obeyed. The soldiers were thrown back as the square collapsed inward, forming a massive ringed pit. Walls sealed. Exits vanished. Only Bill and the hero remained standing at its center. The hero rose slowly, blood trickling from his brow. "So this is it." Bill's voice was hollow. "You killed him." "No," the hero said quietly. "You did, by refusing to end this sooner." Bill's eyes burned. "You don't get to speak his name." He raised the hammer one final time. The hero closed his eyes. The strike never landed. The ember screamed in protest as the hammer froze mid-air, stopped by a force Bill had never felt before. Chains of light wrapped around his arms. A circle flared beneath his feet. Magic, not structural, not mechanical, ancient. A voice echoed from above. "Enough." The air split open. Figures descended, cloaked, masked, bearing sigils older than the empire itself. The conclave. The hero laughed weakly. "You're late." One of them spoke, voice like grinding stone. "The Maker has crossed the threshold." Bill struggled, fury and grief tearing at him. "Let me go!" "You will come with us," the voice continued. "Your existence destabilizes the world." Bill looked at the hero. "This is what you wanted." The hero met his gaze, unreadable. "I wanted control." The chains tightened. As Bill was lifted from the broken square, his eyes locked onto the cracked sword lying useless on the ground. "I made you," he whispered to it, "and I will unmake everything else." The world went dark. Far away, in a hidden chamber beneath the Capitol, the sword pulsed once, and then went silent. And somewhere deeper still, something ancient smiled. Darkness did not end Bill's awareness. It sharpened it. He felt motion without movement, distance without space. The chains of light no longer pulled at his arms, yet their pressure remained, inside him now, wrapped around the ember itself. The conclave had not bound his body, they had bound his function. When sight returned, it came slowly, like a wound reopening. Bill stood in a chamber carved from black stone, smooth as glass and cold as regret. No doors, no windows. The air hummed with restrained power. Symbols crawled across the walls, rearranging themselves as if alive, reacting to his presence. 3 figures stood before him now. The masks were gone. Old faces, too old. "You understand where you are,"
said the one in the center. Bill laughed, dry and broken. I wouldn't be here. This place predates understanding, another replied. It exists to contain outcomes. Bill's jaw tightened. You mean people. The third stepped forward. Her eyes were sharp, calculating. We mean you. Images bloomed in the air between them, visions forced into being. Cities collapsing into themselves, seas folding inward, mountains rising where kingdoms once stood, and always at the center of the ruin, a lone figure holding a hammer. Bill turned away. Those are possibilities. They are inevitabilities, the first said. Every choice you make fractures reality further. Bill watched the empire rot. You watched him butcher dissent, execute children, burn cities in the name of order, and you did nothing. We preserve balance, the woman replied, not justice. Bill looked at her. That's the lie tyrants tell themselves. Silence followed. Then the central figure spoke again. The hero has lost his blade. The empire is weakened. Chaos spreads. This is why you must remain here. Bill's fists clenched. You're afraid of what I'll build. Yes, the figure said calmly, and what you'll destroy. Bill closed his eyes. Phil's face rose unbidden in his mind, not dying, smiling. You can't fix everything. When Bill opened his eyes, the symbols on the walls had stopped moving. You think this chamber can hold me, he said quietly, but you don't understand what you chained. The woman frowned. Explain. Bill smiled for the first time since the square. I bound my power, not my understanding. The chamber trembled. Not violently, precisely. Hairline fractures appeared in the black stone, not cracks of force, but lines of design. The walls groaned as if realizing too late how they had been made. The conclave stepped back. That's impossible, one of them whispered. Bill raised his empty hands. Everything that exists was constructed. That includes prisons. The ember flared, not outward, but inward, burning through its restraints, consuming the chains not as energy, but as concept. The chamber unfolded, literally. Stone peeled away like pages of a book, revealing corridors that had never existed, leading to places that should not connect. The conclave shouted commands, sigils blazing as they attempted to reassert control. Too late. Bill walked forward as reality rearranged itself to let him pass. You cannot leave, the central figure roared. If you do, the empire will fall. Bill didn't stop walking. It already has, he replied. The world twisted. When Bill emerged, he was no longer beneath the Capitol. He stood in a forgotten quarter of the city, one the maps no longer acknowledged. Towers leaned at odd angles, streets half swallowed by shadow. The air smelled of smoke and unrest. Above him, the sky burned red with distant fires. The empire was bleeding. Whispers followed him as he moved, rumors carried on frightened breaths. The hero's sword is broken. The conclave has vanished. The throne is guarded by bastards now. They say the heir isn't trueborn. Bill froze. He turned toward the sound. A group of citizens huddled near a shattered fountain, arguing in hushed tones. One voice rose above the others. The late queen's letters were found, the man said. The bloodline is a lie. The throne was never his by right. Another spat. Does it matter? Blood or not, they'll kill us all the same. Bill felt the lines shift. Illegitimacy. Not just of blood, but of rule. The empire's foundation wasn't cracking. It was hollow. Far away in the highest tower of the Capitol, the hero knelt before the throne. The broken sword lay across his knees. Messengers crowded the chamber,
fear thick in the air. Riots in the eastern districts. The border lords refuse to swear loyalty. The conclave is silent. The hero stared at the blade. For the first time, he did not know what to do. And somewhere beneath the city, deep where ancient things slept, the ember pulsed again, no longer restrained, no longer alone. Bill had escaped, and the game had truly begun. The capital did not fall all at once. It sagged. Power leaked from it like blood from an old wound, slow enough that many did not notice until their hands were wet. Bill moved through the city unseen, not because he hid, but because the city itself seemed to forget him. Walls bent subtly away from his path, crowds parted without knowing why. The ember no longer demanded force, it suggested correction. Posters bearing the hero's sigil were torn down by morning. By evening, new ones appeared, hastily painted, arguing different truths. The air is a lie. Order saved us. Blood does not rule, power does. No one agreed on anything except that the world had shifted. In the outer districts, a young woman read the letters again by candlelight, her hands shaking. The seal was unmistakable, the late queen's personal mark. Her lover watched the door, pale and sweating. If this is true, they'll kill you for having it. They'll kill me for not using it. She was not noble by name, but she was by blood. The queen's blood, illegitimate, unacknowledged, alive. And she was not the only one. Across the empire, old secrets surfaced, bastards hidden in monasteries, children sent away with hush money, lines erased from records by careful hands. The hero believed control meant certainty. He had underestimated memory. In the high tower, the hero stood alone now. The messengers had fled. The guards whispered when they thought he could not hear. He lifted the sword. The crack along its length had spread, branching like veins. It no longer felt like an extension of his will. It felt heavy, resistant. "You were meant to obey," he muttered. The sword did not respond. For the first time since he had claimed it, the hero felt truly unarmed. Bill watched the tower from a distance, standing atop a broken aqueduct. He did not smile. Victory was not a shape he recognized anymore. The lines showed him what was coming. Civil war if left alone, rebellion devouring itself. A dozen would rise claiming right, none strong enough to hold it. And beneath all of it, something older stirring, drawn by instability, by the embers awakening, by the fracture of authority. The threat was no longer the hero, it was what waited after him. Bill descended into the lower districts, where fires burned in barrels and people spoke freely because they believed no one listened. A group had gathered around a makeshift platform, a man speaking not with confidence but conviction. "We don't need another crown," the man said. "We need rules that outlive men." Murmurs of agreement rippled outward. Bill felt the ember pulse. This was dangerous too. Ideas always were. That night, the hero finally left the tower. He moved through secret corridors, descending into the depths beneath the capital, past doors sealed for generations. His footsteps echoed in places even the conclave had feared to tread. He carried the sword not as a weapon, but as a key. At the deepest chamber, he stopped. The air was warm here, breathing. "You were never meant for him," a voice whispered from the dark. The hero tightened his grip. "You chose me. We chose need, and now you are no longer necessary." Something shifted. The hero felt it, authority draining from him, not seized but withdrawn.
Above ground, Bill staggered as the lines twisted violently. He looked toward the tower, eyes widening. "No," he whispered, "that's not your move." Too late. The old threat had found a new opening, and for the first time, Bill did not know how to stop what was coming, only that the Empire's fall had been the least of their worries.